So I will request Yusuf to begin with your opening statement about STEM, teaching it well.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about on two fronts. One is that in the teaching of STEM, one of the big issues is context continuously, and especially in mathematics. In science, I think a lot of the contexts are very easily available, but in mathematics, many things are hard to motivate, many topics are hard to motivate. Music, of course, is something that everybody's enthralled to, is enamored by, and it can be used very effectively to model certain things. From teaching fractions to teaching modular arithmetic at higher levels. You take a beat cycle, it's a 7-beat cycle, an 8-beat cycle. We see all sorts of cycles in our daily lives with the calendar having 13 and 31, 7 days in a week, 12 hours on the clock, and so students are expected to actually understand modular arithmetic in many ways, and often we have complaints about students not understanding out at time, because we're also forcing a decimal system simultaneously with another sexagesimal system. So if you start to talk about rhythmic cycles and how you have 7 beats, and after the 7th beat comes the first beat, so you've got modular arithmetic going on, and you have all sorts of calculations, especially in tabla, where we have these things called tihais, a phrase repeated 3 times to land on the first beat of a cycle. So things like that can really make it interesting for students. The second thing that really helps is narrative. All major religions of the world have been spread through narrative. It's a very effective tool in learning anything. So the narrative of mathematics and of science, history of science, is often lost upon teachers and students. So, for example, teaching trigonometry through understanding what the medieval Islamic mathematicians were doing, or what was happening in medieval India, which is where trigonometry as we know it today originates from. The 3 functions, sine, cosine, and tangent, were really called chords and half chords. So ardha for sine, and then cosine, and why is it called the cosine, and things like that. So for students to understand that it connects to the story of mankind is going to become very, very important in understanding concepts that usually they have to memorize, unfortunately, and they don't need to. They can actually learn them through understanding the history of those functions. That's, I think, where I'll park myself for now, and I'm sure there's more conversation ahead.
Thank you, definitely. Yes,
So my vision for the STEM program is basically to convert traditional teaching to outcome-based learning, where the student physically implements something to solve a real-world problem. So I want to inculcate innovation and invention in the students. In the morning, Umar Saab was here and he was talking about knowledge pills, right? So basically, for me, the knowledge pills do exist nowadays too, and these knowledge pills are project-based learning. And I have what I have experienced in the past few years, that for the undergraduate programs or K-12 programs, if we move towards knowledge-based learning, those are the right pills that we can give that inculcate everything from mathematics to arts and to science. So everything can be get together if we can go towards experience-based learning or project-based learning. There was a recent story which I was reading on the internet that was talking about a student who was only 16 years of age, and he produced his own orthodontics by himself at the age of 16. So this is so he has innovated something using his own learning based or project based learning from his learning experience. So I think that is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting. So we'll get to know more about the right pills and talk about that. Yes, Doctor.
Thank you very much. My perspective on STEM is a little different. Okay, I've spent my life in higher education, so to me, when we talk science, technology, engineering, maths, well, normally we do not associate technology and engineering with K to 12. But nonetheless, the way I look at STEM education is it promotes a way of thinking. It promotes a way of approaching problems and coming up with solutions to those problems. And this is where we are letting our children down, severely in fact, in the K to 12 regime, where our assessment at the end of the day, whether it's metric or the intermediate assessment, is completely based on rote learning. Okay, I had an alarming experience rather recently when I went over the class 8 science textbook. And if you look at the number of topics covered, it is phenomenal. Okay, it's all breadth, no depth, and to think that children will actually learn something, they will acquire some knowledge on those topics is an impossible task. So they're left with nothing but memorize, 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 and that's what we test in the examinations. So we're doing it all wrong, okay? We're not building up a base where children are taught how to think, how to analyze problems, or to come up with innovative solutions, and we need to do that. So there is a curriculum issue, there is a major assessment issue, but STEM itself is important even for a poet, or as Yusuf has brought very nicely music into the picture. It's not just science and technology, it applies everywhere. Normally I have no issues in trying to come up with a real world example for teaching physics or chemistry or something like that. But thank you for pointing out that mathematics has a physical domain as well. I was thinking in terms of petals of flowers, you can find series, mathematical series in petals, etc. But Dr. ने बात की experiential learning की, okay? It is almost critically important. The school that I went to, they always do these strange experiments. So at MIT, what they did was they put on a skull cap with sensors on the brain and started teaching students. Okay? And looking at them and seeing what happens after 6 minutes, almost all the lights went out. So everybody was sleeping. Okay? So you know that the attention span in the modern era is just about that much. Okay? So they said, all right, next, how do we keep the lights on? So given the 6 minute time frame, and I may be coming close to that age, given that 6 minute time frame, how do we keep the lights on? So they said, look, for example, one of the abstract or difficult concepts to grasp is one of angular momentum. Okay, so you teach it on a blackboard, you make diagrams, you walk around with your arms raised and say, look, there's a vector, etc. Take a bicycle wheel, give it 2 handles, give it a good spin, and then ask the person to turn the wheel over. Okay? When you do that, it does this. It forces you to go that way. And suddenly, the lights go on. Okay? So, bringing experiential learning into the classroom is a major effective tool in terms of, promoting or doing it well, that aspect. But again, I'll just wrap up by saying, why it's important for us, for example, in higher education, to have our children properly taught in K to 12 is, as a teacher, probably the most disappointing, or rather the most challenging 1 hour that you spend is with a freshman class. Okay? When you're trying to get them to come out of their shells and interact with you, and they sit there and they just look at your face, no questions, no expressions, they're almost dead to the world, because 12 years we've taught them how to memorize and regurgitate. Okay, that's all that we've taught them. We've never taught them to think. So we need to change something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji. I would just like to, I think, expand a little bit on what Dr. Naveed has said. And about teaching STEM, and for that matter, I think teaching anything well. And I think I would just like to try to put a little bit of context into it from my perspective. And one of the things that always drives me as an educator is looking at the direction that the world is taking right now. And what we have to do in order to make sure that the students we're educating right now are really ready for the world of the future. And it is a drastically different world. Technology is redefining what it means to be productive, and what type of skills and thought processes students are going to need to have in order to be able to contribute effectively in the future world. I mean, just very if you look at what technologies are actually already there or just over the horizon, even in the next 10 years, a huge number of jobs are about to become obsolete. I mean, the one that we're probably most familiar with is, self-driven cars, which we all know, are now, have driven, tens of thousands of miles in the US in the pilot stage, and many cars which are coming out now are already semi-autonomous and will be fully autonomous in 5 years. So you're talking about, I think I was reading somewhere in the US, the impact on the economy of drivers and affiliated and people affiliated with drivers, like roadside cafes that are going to lose their jobs. The economic value of that in the next 10 years is expected to be absolutely enormous. I mean, I can't remember the exact amount, but I remember it was a significant percentage of the US GDP, which is a very big GDP. So you were struggling with these things. You have artificial intelligence self-learning systems now, which apart from being able to beat humans at sophisticated board games, same sort of technology can be applied to basic, medical diagnosis as well. So, you have a lot of, certain types of doctors will not have a job in the future. Diagnostic will be done by software. It's going to happen, it's almost certain now. And these are not far-fetched fairy tales. These are technologies which are there right now. So, in this sort of situation, number one, obviously the teaching of STEM becomes very important for two reasons. Number one, a lot of these technologies, require trained people to actually work in those sectors. So, I was reading recently that apparently cloud computing, which is one of the new technologies coming up now, there's a requirement for about 1.7 million cloud computing experts. So the technology that's coming in itself is requiring a different type of professional, and the types of skills that these technologies demand of human beings are STEM related expertise. So it becomes very important. But then we come to the question of how do we teach STEM? I think we should teach STEM in the same way really that we teach everything else, which is that as many of the other panelists have said, it should be experiential, and it should also in the process of teaching STEM, students should acquire other crucial life skills as well. They should acquire collaboration skills, they should acquire research skills, they should acquire communication skills, and they should learn how to think creatively and out of the box really. It's actually these skills in the future, I think, which are going to make people relevant, whether they are in STEM related professions or non-STEM related professions, because as I said, increasingly tasks which require a lower degree of complexity can more efficiently be done through computer algorithms. So we need to make sure that when we teach STEM, we teach it in a manner that actually teaches students the skill set which will be required to be relevant in the future. And increasingly, that skill set is, as I said, is creative thinking, collaboration, communication. Unless students have these skills, they will not be able to succeed in either STEM or in any other profession. So I just thought I'd give a little bit of context over there, and again, I think I'll park my thing there, and we can have an interesting conversation about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to add a few things to that, as we need to take it as a model of disruption, as the world is changing, so everything is going to change. We need to also look at the fundamentals which some people might not agree with me, is the current form of education, how that came in being, and what was the very purpose of that. So as Dr. Naveed and rest of the speakers said, that it's more memorizing. So the whole project or the whole planning of a student in any shape or form of school is to pass an exam, and for that he has to or she has to memorize a definition or the curriculum or whatever it is taught. In my point of view, or where the world is heading now, learning has to evolve. It's the basic fundamental difference between education and learning, that you are telling somebody or they are arriving to a conclusion. So teaching it well, coming to the theme, I think we need to change how we are asking the question. We need to ask different types of questions. Rather than telling them, we need to discuss more. So schools and places where we are teaching STEM have to be a place where they can come and discuss more rather than listen to what I have to say or you have to say. I'll give a practical example without any, like a real example. We built innovation labs in Malaysia. We spent 2.5 years in pushing the STEM agenda for the government there. And in 2 years' time, most of the students or teachers who did capacity building are now working on an experiential model where they can actually experience into things and learn STEM out of that. For example, as the first speaker mentioned, we're using computer graphics and animated movies to teach them parabola and sciences, which children love to participate and understand this is something they like. We are even using Disney content to use mathematics, and it's by Pixar. So, we're using Pixar content to teach mathematics, which is based on animated movies, all blockbuster famous movies, and children are loving it. Previously, they were not willing to attend the mathematics class, but now they are actually getting to the, just like there's a grass, so it's parabola, how is it made, form, and blah, blah, blah. Secondly, we need to also encourage children to find things, rather than tell them what it is. So I think this, if we go into that model, our domain should be to look into the digital side of the affairs more. And the other point I would like to highlight is the scalability of that. Not everybody can afford certain types of education or equipment or things that are required mostly for STEM. And although it's taught from kindergarten to K-12, most STEM subjects are taught in isolation. So we need to bring a collaborative or a project-based learning where they can collaborate on one part of the STEM, for example, sciences to technology, because that's the missing angle. They're only studying one part and not joining. So in my 2 cents to the equation is that if you could really make it a project-based learning, collaborative learning, well, in the end, you will actually come out, learning through experiential manner and develop skills such as analytical skills, critical thinking, and decision making. So I think that could be the key to take it. In a nutshell, my point of view is that if you start as early as you can, 5 years, 4 years, whenever you get a chance, be having an experience. And in schools also, we cannot change the whole paradigm, but we can design it like an exponential model. So let's take it as an elective, and people who want to be innovation and all can learn few things from that. So in a nutshell, I think we should take a view that instead of making the children or the people who are students, considering them as digital immigrants, we should take them as digital habitants and convert our economy through that into a producer's economy rather than a consumer's economy. So this is the way forward.
Thank you. So a lot of questions to explore. Yusuf, if I may ask you, in your current role at the university, being a teacher and trainer yourself, music seems to be a very rare medium which, as you taught yourself, can be used for STEM education. So could you elaborate a little on that? How are you bringing all these together? And also consider the right now, the current structure of teaching in Pakistan. So how does that come together?
Well, it's funny you ask this. Like, one of the reasons why I was hired at the university was to design a course for music and mathematics. I think there was a model that they were inspired by from Harvey Mudd College, where they're, I think, teaching engineering primarily or in large part through music. So I'm still in the stages of developing that course material, but what I have found is that there is very compelling activity-based, project-based, experiential learning that students can do when they start to relate things that they're learning in mathematics with what they're learning in music, or deriving mathematics from the learning of music. The challenge, of course, the big challenge here is that music itself is seldom taught in schools. So I think that probably one way to promote the teaching of music now will be through teaching mathematics through music, eventually. And I think this tends to lend itself well to having different parts of the brain interact, and that's where creativity lies, right? In making those connections between various disciplines. Currently, I'm teaching calculus, but as my students will attest, there's a lot of the history of mathematics involved in establishing not only context but the need. As you were talking about how students need to want to come to a mathematics classroom. That can only happen when you've established the need for a particular skill set to even be developed. And often the needs are so weak in textbooks and as colorful and glossy as they might be, and even in kind of the curriculum, that establishing that need becomes the big challenge. And I think part of that is a challenge also of teacher training, indeed. Uh, but I think more so, if teachers themselves are not involved in more than just the discipline they're teaching, this is going to be a big uphill battle, because the diversity of interests of the teachers themselves are going to translate to the students. So you actually have to have musical training for teachers as well. All teachers should learn music, should learn art, should learn a variety of things, at least dabble in them, so that there could be some connections that they can make the classroom experience richer.
I'm sure it's music to the ears of many teachers here, but then again, it means a lot of training on part of teachers to understand first how to teach effectively STEM, and then bringing in new dimensions like music there.
Yes.
Thank you. So Vakar, I would like to ask you to tell us a little about, I hope we all have heard about the 3D printers and how they are doing what they're doing, but if you could tell in layman terms about what is the significance of 3D printer models, and how could, what models could be used by schools to adopt this to make STEM programs more successful?
Thank you for the question. Basically, we all know that when we are learning, when the students are learning, they want something tangible. They want something that is tactical, that can be touched, right? Many of you, even when we were studying chemistry, we didn't know how the molecules are joined together and it was very difficult to simulate. It was difficult for the teachers to tell the students how different molecules come together to form a different compound, right? So in that case, they would like to see physically, and then there are many other aspects. This is one aspect, and the other aspect is there are art students who would like to see things happen physically, printing something, right? And then you can have you can make your own robot, make your own flying robot. You can make your own orthodontics that I was studying about, and you can. I was watching a Samsung movie a few days back, and Samsung Pakistan. I don't know if any of you have already seen it. There was one small child who didn't have a hand, right? And they were all playing cricket, and then that person who didn't have a hand was able to play cricket with a prosthetic arm, and that prosthetic arm was 3D printed. So now things are being changed, and people want to, and as we already have, want to have something that is physical. So and this is not only for the college students or for the engineering students or for the university students. It can be from the start, as Dr. Saab said. It should be from right. You have to put the innovation part. You have to put that innovation part right from grade 3 or grade 4, whatever. From that part, you can start by just let them write their names with a 3D pen, right? So 3D pen is the starting point, and then you can build on that physical model from the basic level to advanced level, where the person can make a robotic car out of 3D printing. So this is an objective-based learning, where you give a problem to the student, and then he make that problem, and then he should compete too. This is very important point that I have an experience for. In my university, we have the Pakistan's largest robotic competition. What we do there is we have made that competition part of our curriculum. The Department of Mechatronics Engineering has then made it part of the curriculum. So this can same be transformed to the school level too. That is, should make it part of the curriculum and then offer competition contest so that the student can start early.
Thank you very much. That was very elaborate. Thank you. Dr. Malik, so what you talked about. So as a teacher, I'm thinking so much has gone wrong probably. I'm thinking about, the teaching that all of us are doing. Is there a way out of that? And then if we try to fix what has gone wrong, let's talk about, 10 years from now, and they say that it's not going to be the same curriculum, maybe no curriculum. So where are we right now and what is the way out?
Number one, I believe this audience is mostly teachers.
Yes?
I don't think that the teachers are doing anything wrong. Unfortunately, there's a huge elephant in the room. Okay, and that elephant happens to be the examination board. Okay. Now, I'm not talking of the O levels and the A levels. I'm talking of the absolute majority of the students are in the metric and intermediate stream. Let me give you one of my pet examples, which has been burnt into my neurons. Okay, I went to the, and I don't feel hesitant in naming names. Intermediate board Lahore, they have sample papers or papers from past examinations. Click on that. In the English paper, the question that is being asked is, the questions below relate to short stories in book 3. Question number X, what was written underneath the box? That's the question. So now think about it. I mean, they are forcing you to memorize, not understand, not get the knowledge in there. Now, so that elephant has got to be taken care of. I'm sure we know how to do it. My personal approach, whenever I'm talking in terms of science or whatever, is to find examples from the real world around us. Okay, so it's for a management school, it doesn't make sense to talk about Wall Street, etc. Talk about Pakistan. Okay. If you're talking physics, take an example from the road. If I'm talking programming, take a bus and talk about it, etc. So you contextualize in a way that the students can relate to that, and that helps their understanding. But as teachers, I think we know all of that. It is again the same issue. The assessment is all wrong, and if the assessment is going to test for rote learning, that's how we are going to teach, and that's how students are going to learn. So we need to change that. That's one paradigm. But as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the recent discovery that it's not just the assessment but the textbooks themselves. Number one, burn them. Let's get rid of the prescribed textbooks. It's a bad idea. Define the syllabus and get some intelligent people to define the syllabus, not everything under the sun. The same textbook, let me give you an example. It has a chapter on pressure and things like that. So we're talking about pressure, and my engineer friends would understand that. And we're talking of pressure is defined as the force per unit area. Except till that point, force has not been mentioned. Children don't know what force is, and we're defining something higher as force per unit area. And the only tangential mention of the force is when you put your hands under a tap, the water hits you, you have a feeling that that's force. I mean, and then it's definition after definition after definition after definition. We need to tone down the breadth of the curriculum. We need to build it up as a proper structure, lay the foundation, build something on top, bring something on top. We need to assess them in terms of understanding. If we don't do that, I've also got a degree in engineering, so it's not meant for engineers, but I say that we produce, let's say, civil engineers who know how to build a straight bridge. Okay? As soon as we ask them, well, this bridge has to go there and curve halfway through and land here, say, well, that wasn't in the textbook. So that's what we've done. Okay, with our entire population, with our entire educated
But what would be the starting point then?
Starting point would be, this is a personal recipe, right? So I'm not saying that it actually fits all, but it's a challenge. I would say I would change the assessment. Now, if I were to give an application-oriented examination, I'm sure the students will be out on the streets and saying, out of course, okay, we were never taught this, what is this? So let's do it intelligently. Give them 110 marks paper. 100 marks, the way they've been used to. 10 marks is a bonus question, which is application of knowledge.
Taking on from what Uzair and you've said, I'm going to ask a question from Nasir Saab. Nasir Saab, you are at the helm of the school, you have got a lot of schools under you and a lot of autonomy to do things. So in light of the discussion that we do need to change things and talking about STEM education and applying things, creating better learning and teaching environments, what would be the steps that you would take or you would suggest that educators need to take to promote STEM nationally as well?
Well, I'll speak a little bit about what we're trying to do in Beacon House right now, and I think a lot of what we're trying to do. Obviously, we feel that that is what educators should be doing. That's why we've taken that direction. So we are trying to build in a values-based education more and more into our system. It's, as I said, it's very important to define your end objective, before you get there. So we have something which we call the learner's profile in Beacon House, and we've taken inspiration from the IB, and we've developed a profile which is basically not talking about grades. It's talking about qualities that students need to have, attributes, which you would know about, and including things like digitally literate, empathetic, globally aware. I don't remember all of them, but it all relates to those life skills, which I said are very, very important for students to know. So what we're trying to do actually, and I think what educators need to actually do increasingly everywhere in the world, is whatever activities or whatever learning the children are doing, it should be underpinned by those values. So all those values should be an integral part of the curriculum. So whether they're learning geography, history, mathematics, the projects they do and the activities they do should try to reinforce those key qualities. And it is, for example, if you're talking about, digitally literate as a very simple example, doing assignments which encourage students to collaborate with other students internationally using technology. It could be an assignment which is really cross-curricular in that they're bringing in concepts of science and mathematics in one project, and they're doing that project with another group of students in another country. They could be using technology in that process. They're learning communication skills. They're learning how to use technology to reach an end. Not as an end unto itself, but as a tool, which is what it is in the real world. So I think that's something which we're doing increasingly, and educators need to really focus on that. But obviously, with as you want teaching to become, as you want teaching to evolve, and you want real learning to take place, in the classroom, one of the areas which I feel particularly in countries like Pakistan, that you really have to focus on is teacher training, and that's a big limitation that comes in. I'm glad that LUMS is setting up the School of Education now, but amazingly there are really no schools of education in Pakistan. So most of the teachers they do teach over here in the K to 12 sphere at least, are oftentimes not qualified teachers. So, and that becomes a limitation. I agree that the prescribed, that the assessment system definitely needs to change. There's no doubt about that. I think one of the best assessments for a student really is the parent-teacher meeting. I think if you can have good PTMs, you don't need to even have assessments, because you find out everything that your child has learned in that PTM. But for a teacher to conduct a really effective PTM is really, really difficult. There are a lot of teachers who can't really do a very effective PTM. We talk about student-led PTMs where you come in and the student actually walks the parent through the learning that they've done. But that requires a lot of training on the part of teachers. So I think one of the things that educators will have to do increasingly, if they really want to be educators, rather than just giving students useless information which they'll forget afterwards, is really probably in the Pakistani context at least invest a lot in the training of their own teachers. Which is something which we're doing naturally. We're trying to reorient all our teacher training programs so that they do help teachers in having more interactive lessons, building these values into everything they do in the classroom, having more effective PTMs where the children actually are in charge of not only learning but telling their parents what they've learned. So so those things are very, very
One
important.
of the biggest challenges I find with teacher training, since we're on this subject, I've done a lot of teacher training for very diverse contexts. I was also working for DIL, so we were doing teacher training in rural schools in the interior. And the one thing that trips every teacher is actually a very essential question. Pick a topic from the curriculum, pick a topic from your textbook. It might be chapter 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. Ask yourself, why do they need to learn this? It's a simple question. Why is this important? And that's a great starting point, because the thing is that teacher training often doesn't always involve teachers actually being the kinds of students we want them to produce. So if teacher training, for example, happens in a teacher-centric way, which often is the case because they're still lecturing about good pedagogy, there's PowerPoint slides on good pedagogy, and you're thinking, wait a minute, in fact, even this setup right now is problematic because you're on the listening end. You're sitting there as listening beings and are not actually part of this discussion, which is kind of, yeah, I mean, I know that we can't really afford to go there right now, but because of the structure, but that's it, the structures that we're designing. So in fact, we need to have a STEM conference that models what we're trying to achieve. And the problem with teacher training is that you can have the most enigmatic, charismatic, teacher trainers that are great speakers. It doesn't matter, because it'll all be a big expenditure on some fancy hotel somewhere, but the actual impact of that is not going to be for the teachers because they weren't involved in that model. The architecture of the space, if students are going to be sitting in rows, it's never going to work. They have to be in groups. There's so many other things that are involved in teacher training.
Because you say, we are talking about application, we are talking about integrating different curricula, we are talking about hands-on experiences, and yet, we are talking about individual disciplines. Now, just moving to another dimension, since we have to keep time, we've got a lot of ladies in the room. We've got, however, these 5 experts here, all gentlemen. And I was reading up that there are campaigns being run by countries in the UK and other where they are promoting women to become involved in STEM and pursue careers in the future. You have got STEM ambassadors. So, gentlemen, do you know of ladies who are into STEM? We know of Novera Maksood. I'm sure everybody knows, the Nast engineer who designed Maleficent Wings, and Thor and Terminator has been involved in these movies. But do you know, or do you agree with this, that there are less women in this field?
Well, there are less women, of course, because of the fact of how it is designed. I'll just ask a simple question. If I say, all of you draw a picture of a scientist, you will make a picture of Einstein or a man, right? So this is what is built in, stereotypes. So this has to change. But there are women who are, of course, working. Some women are not very famous in that. There's a market appeal to that, and blah blah blah. So this is how the society works. But in my context, for example, the project which I invested in the innovation labs is run by a lady actually. In fact, it's run by a majority of the ladies, and some of them are country contact for Wikipedia. They're running MIT workshops. They're contacts for the Pixar, and they're doing fantastic stuff. But that's not in Pakistan, right? In our context, it is considered as if you say I met an engineer, so a picture of a man usually appears in the mind. If you say I met somebody, a computer scientist, or somebody, a programmer, is usually related to that. So we need to break this. We need to bring more stories and run initiatives like Code with Girls and stuff like that. We are doing some of that in Malaysia, and we should do that in Pakistan.
So,
Having said that, one thing I must like to add. You see, teachers also have a role. I mean, as a title, let's say if I'm a doctor, so I need to also upgrade myself somehow. Not waiting for the capacity building of the school or the council or the county or the government to sponsor it. So how many teachers here, let's say, have upgraded themselves on the digital disruption or the new kinds of learning? What do they know about what is happening in the world? So this is also another question. You're having a title of a teacher or a role model or a thought leader to influence some young minds, but you're yourself having the knowledge which is some date back 25 years ago. So this is not going to work. Teachers must also come forward as lifelong learners. Unless you don't do that, whatever disruption we are seeing today, cell phones to drones to whatever, it was not there 10 years ago. So all of us who studied 10 years ago are actually have studied something which is technically obsolete, right? So this is my 2 cents that if you don't upgrade as a lifelong learner, it's not going to work.
Any other panelists would like to extend about promoting this career in women to pursue?
I think it's although it has been just because of the built-in knowledge that if we talk about engineers, either it would be a man, or sometimes if it is a woman, then it also would be kind of a man, right? Remember,
I'm sure that's very debatable.
right? So anyhow, so but now the things are being changed. I know a lady who is in settled in Islamabad who is running workshop for the coding program coding. You know, again this coding is should be now part of the curriculum. Coding, everyone should be able to code. Whether you would like to be an engineer, you want to be a scientist, you want to be a dentist, you want to be an artist, you should be able to program. And then the programming is everywhere. So this is one of the disciplines where the woman can come in, because where you just have to code on your computers. She's doing some graphic.
Can everyone, my next question, to wrap up this part is, apart from women, can every student like myself, I feel or I have been made to believe that I cannot understand maths. That's how, I've been trained. So can everyone understand or study STEM? Because I have also reading that in the UK and the US, there is now a campaign to make STEM mandatory at the foundation level. Would you agree with that? Or would everyone be able to study? So let's give chances to people who, yeah.
As said in my opening remarks, STEM education promotes a way of thinking. And just from that perspective, yes, even a poet should be, taught the basic STEM principles. As a colleague over here has pointed out, coding or programming is coming into the school curriculum. Not because we want to produce computer sciences across the board, but because it promotes a certain way of thinking. Analyzing the problem, tackling it, does it come first, is there anything repetitive, is there a decision to be made? So it just, everybody has to be exposed to these basic principles, okay, and at the school level.
You would endorse that?
Yeah, I would definitely endorse that. I think, as Dr. Saab said, programming is very interesting. It actually it teaches logical thinking skills, problem solving skills, all skills. Creative problem solving. A lot of times when you're asked to, usually when you're programming, you're asked to build a certain program. Oftentimes there's more than one way of reaching there. So there are many different paths to the same thing. So I think it does promote a certain type of thought, and I think irrespective of what profession people want to choose afterwards, it's something which will really I think help children at a very early level to develop those skills. And I really think that STEM-based disciplines are probably the best way of teaching a certain thought process. The other thing is that I think it's very important to, at a very basic level, at least understand how the world works and how the universe operates around us. We don't all have to become quantum physicists, but we should understand I think why the planets revolve around each other, why does the earth revolve around the sun rather than the sun revolving around the earth. If you don't even understand the basics of existence, you're going to be a very confused person. You should understand the space that you exist in, why that space on a basic conceptual level operates the way it does. What is gravity, conceptually speaking? It's a universal force that governs everything in the universe. So just in order to know what the basic meaning of existence is from a scientific standpoint, naturally I think some basic concepts of STEM should be taught from that perspective as well.
But to your question, if whether everybody can learn it or not, I'll make a quick confession here on the microphone now. Is that I was a failure in math in my school. In my A levels, I got a D in math. Okay, and now I'm doing teacher training for mathematics teachers, and I'm teaching at a university. The thing is that I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I was not limited to the curriculum, to the confines of the curriculum. In fact, I wasn't buying into all of that stuff. Omar Khayyam was known to the masses as a poet, but also had one of the most innovative solutions for the depressed cubic using conic sections. So I think, again, history. We have intellectual heroes that we promote through STEM. We can do that because they should learn more than just about the plunderers like Mahmood Ghazni. and maybe about Jamshed Al-Kashi's solution of the sine of 1 degree.
So, yeah, a lot of examples. Thank you so much. Yes, very
Just a
quickly.
quick one. As everybody said that programming, coding should be part of it. We did some workshops, again as a case study, that teachers were teaching social studies, English and all, when they learn coding, they start developing their own modules, and sometimes children participate in that. And becomes such an experiential learning
Yeah.
thing. So they actually learn, because in Malaysia, you got English is a problem, people want to learn English. A lot of people don't know that. So English teachers are learning coding to use that as part of the pedagogy, to teach better English, social studies, science, and it all become a game-based learning situation, which actually benefit all. And initially, all they said you could not learn programming.
Very
but they did.
interesting example. I think